In the last lesson, we looked at the while loop, which is one way of performing repetition in Ruby. In this lesson, we're going to look at a similar loop called the until loop. So let's go ahead and open up a Ruby program so we can take a look first at the general form. Here's the general form of the until loop. As you can see, it's very similar to the while loop. We have the keyword until, followed by a comparison or a relational expression. Until that comparison becomes true, then we perform the statements inside the loop. So, just like with a while loop, we're going to have some sort of way of making the comparison become true. And a lot of times, when you're just doing a counting type loop, that'll involve incrementing or decrementing a counting variable. So let's take a look at the two examples from the last lesson and see how we'd write those as an until loop. Let's start with displaying hello world 5 times on the screen. Here we initialize count to 1, and now we say until count is greater than 5. So until that becomes true, we're going to write hello world to the screen, and we're going to increment count by 1. So let's take a look at how that program works. So there you see we get hello world 5 times. Let's comment out this program and write another small one to demonstrate the until loop. We'll do the summing the first 10 integer problem again. So we start off by initializing a sum, initializing a variable to store the numbers, and then our loop. So again, you see the similarities between the while loop and the until loop. The only difference is that our loop runs until number is greater than 10. So while, if you want to use that expression, number is less than 10, then we're going to keep adding sums, and actually until it's less than or equal to 10. It's only when number becomes greater than 10, then this expression becomes false, and we break out of the loop. So let's see how that program works. Again, we're looking for the sum of 55. And we forgot to put S at the end, so let's add that real quick. Try it again. And there's our 55. So in review, the until loop has a comparison, and our loop executes until that comparison becomes true. And at that point, then the loop stops. So in the first example, until count became greater than 5, we would write hello world to the screen, or the program would. In the second example, we kept adding a number till sum until the value of number became greater than 10. So the until loop and the while loop are very, very similar, and they just use a little bit of different logic in the comparisons. And I would say that the two are equivalent, and a lot of it just depends on what the best way to express the testing condition is will determine which type of loop that you use, because really they're both equivalent in how they work. So there's not like you use until loops when you're trying to do blah, or you use while loops to do yay. A lot of it just depends on the logic and how you initially, a lot of times, think of the problem. So now we'll wrap up this lesson on until loops, and we'll move on to the next lesson where we look at a different type of loop, something called an iterator-based loop.